Who would be a Wolves fan, eh?
On goes Bull. Speedball might yet win it here for Wolves. Flash in the shot. What a goal!
Well, it's Little Dan with your latest Wolves Fancast match preview. On tonight's episode, we're going to be talking about the weekend's most fearsome social media rivalry since Leon Knight and Jamie O'Hara. It's Wolves against Aston Villa. We'll be talking about the rest of the Premier League fixtures, obviously team news from the weekend's games. We're going to bring up the Erling Haaland bet, which we tipped earlier on in the season, which looks like it's going to be coming in quids in for those followers. I hope that jumped on. As you can see on tonight's episode, I've got with me Phil Prescott, who's been on previously. Danny Rosamond, who's joining us as a new guest tonight. How are you, Dan?
I'm right, thank you. Yourself?
Yeah, good, thanks. Thanks for coming on. It's been I've been chasing you for a long time. We finally got it over the line. So hopefully you put in a performance than he did tonight. As a new guest, we usually ask new guests the simple questions. Who's your favourite footballer for Wolves that isn't Steve Bull?
Isn't Steve Bull? Wow. I think you take out the new era. That's cheating a little bit. You're probably looking Robbie Dennison, Robbie Keane, John DeWalt's with a cult hero, but I got soft one for Steve Froggatt, so you can tell what kind of hero I'm coming from there.
I don't know whether it's purely because it's May the 4th, but you sounded a bit like Darth Vader then. But Dan, it was a fantastic answer. When I first joined the Fancast, my answer was Robbie Dennison. So I knew there was something I liked about you from the start. You're a man of fine tastes. The second question is, where do you keep your chocolate and sauces? The cupboard or the
chocolate in the cupboard, sauces in the cupboard until it's open, then it's in the fridge.
That's it, like the right way. Once it's open, keep refrigerated. Alex Villa fan, musician, all-round good lad is joining us tonight. I'm going to ask you the same question first. Ketchup and chocolate, where do you keep them?
Fridge after they've been opened, definitely every time. Cold chocolate as well. Nothing beats it. Yeah, man. The break of the cold chocolate every time.
And similar to the question I asked Danny, but from a Villa point of view, which Wolves player in history grates you the most?
That's a tough one, man. None of them really grate me the most, I guess.
That's the Gornal in you, that is, because you deep down, you know you're a Wolves fan now.
You know what? I've got a lot of time for Wolves, man. They've like over the years, like when we was in the lines and stuff, they helped us, massively. None of them really grate me because none of them are blue noses. So, you know what I mean.
We'll go with David Davis then because he's ex-Wolves and he plays for. I don't know if does he even still play for Blues. I don't even know what's happened to David. I was at Shrewsbury last time I heard, wasn't it?
I don't know what's happened to Blues, to be fair.
Yeah, obviously we had Mateusz Sarkic was on loan at Blues last season or the start of this season, was it? I can't remember. That's another one that's crossed the divide. Just a bit of housekeeping before we properly jump into tonight's show. Wolves Fancast are organising and participating in a charity match at Molineux on June the 2nd on behalf of mental health charity Mind. If you can try and donate as much as possible, whether it's £1, £100, whatever you can afford, it would be really, really appreciated because it's a charity that we've been supporting for a few years now, and they're a great charity that help people with their mental health, help people who have got people in their lives suffering with mental health, giving you guides, tips, just all strategies to help you with your mental health, which we all struggle from time to time. So yeah, the link's in the description. The game's on June the 2nd. Hopefully some of you can actually come and watch us on June the 2nd, make us, watch us make fools of ourselves trying to impersonate our favourite footballers. So yeah, June the 2nd at Molineux on behalf of Mind. Hopefully you can help us with that. Game week 35 kicks off Saturday at 3:00. There's a carousel of fixtures at 3:00 on Saturday. Bournemouth at home to Chelsea, Brighton at home to Everton, Fulham at home to Leicester, Leeds travel to Man City with Sam Allardyce, who believes he's on the same level par as Pep, Klopp, and Mikel Arteta. Big statement from Big Sam there, the point drinking Dudleyan. Tottenham at home to Crystal Palace, and obviously the big fixture between ourselves, Wolves and Villa. Saturday evening ends with Liverpool versus Brentford. Manchester United travel to West Ham, and Forest at home to Southampton, which is a big game in the relegation battle on Monday night. Looking at those fixtures, Danny, I don't know if you're a betting man like myself. Where's your sort of money for a banker looking at those fixtures there on the left?
I mean, if you're looking at a banker, I think Brighton to do Everton, especially at Brighton. That'd be mine personally.
Wonder what
for better odds anyway.
There.
What's that? Sorry.
I wonder what odds you'd get on another 6-0 there on Saturday between Brighton and Everton.
Let's not talk about it, eh?
Yeah, we won't talk about that game too much. Where would your money be, Al?
It's got to be there, hasn't it, really? Brighton, or you'd say Bournemouth, really, with the form they're in, and Chelsea, the form they're in. I mean, they've had some shockers recently, haven't they? So, yeah, go Bournemouth, man. Yeah,
I think Bournemouth might be a nice tip for people who want sort of maybe longer odds than maybe Brighton. Obviously, Phil, we're in a fancy Premier League together. We've been mates for a good few years now. I'm eyeing up Erling Haaland as my triple captain at home to Leeds on Saturday. Where's your money on a banker?
Well, you've sort of like set me up there. I was sort of thinking, given what the others have picked, I'd probably be going like Man City, but with a handicap bet. Maybe give Leeds 3-goal head start or something. Obviously, you're not going to get very good odds just going straight on City, but I think it doesn't matter what Big Sam says. I think they could be in for a hiding there.
Yeah, I reckon.
The latest news that came out of Molyneux today was our April Player of the Month nominations: João Gomez, Craig Dawson, Totti Gomez, Max Kilman, and Diego Costa. Looking at those 5 players there, Danny, and it's a very blurred picture because for me, April was a very blurred month, regardless of the amount of points that we got. Who would be your April Player of the Month, Danny?
For me, even with the couple of goals conceded, sadly just gone off in Dawson. I think he's completely changed the mentality. You build a team from the back, and I think the results we've got with the clean sheets, Craig Dawson.
I think he's massively improved the spine, hasn't he? Craig Dawson, Phil, who would be your Player of the Month?
As you say, it's a tough one. Dawson, probably. I think. Gomez hasn't started them all, but he's quickly made himself a fan's favourite, hasn't he? And those that performance against Chelsea, he did well against Brentford. I'd probably go Gomez.
It's a bit of a wild shape, but I think if you were to stricken the Brighton performance away from the month, I might have just edged towards Matheus Nunes in that April. I thought he was obviously outstanding against Chelsea, scored a huge goal, which was has been nominated for the Premier League Goal of the Month for April. If you want to watch it back here, it's just an absolutely outstanding strike. Sort of reminds me of me in my dreams at times, to be honest. That strike, it was unbelievable. Kepa had no chance, did he? But we have got to talk about last Saturday's performance away to Brighton, Danny. It was absolutely horrific, wasn't it?
It was, but you know what? It got that silly in the end. You kind of got apathetic towards it. You had no feeling. You're just like, this is horrendous. It's embarrassing. Write it off. The blame is shared with Lopetegui and the players. I think he set up wrong, completely wrong. I didn't think Brighton did a lot complicated, to be honest. They just made forward runs and basic forward passes, and we looked bamboozled. Like, what is this passing forward about? So that's what he got wrong. But what I can't tolerate from the players is I don't care what player, what position they're best in. They should be able to control a ball and find another Wolves player, and they just weren't doing it. And in football, you can get away with 2 or 3, maybe having a bad game, but it was the majority. So hopefully this week at Compton, they've had some strong words for each other, put it right on the training ground, and we go again. What can you do?
Yeah, totally agree. I was apathetic when it went 3-0. I think when it got to half time, I actually commented tongue in cheek that we may be able to do a wasn't we like 4-0 down to Swansea years ago, and we ended up pulling it back to like 4-all. And it was just like, that ain't anywhere near going to happen today. Obviously, Pedro Neto there on the left, Phil, was probably one of the only sort of minor positives on the day. Did anyone else come out with any credit for you?
I don't think they did, to be honest. I think Neto was generally the sort of like everyone's sort of slightly positive takeaway from the game. I mean, it as you say, it was just off day, everyone off. It was pretty sort of terrible, but at the same time, Brighton are a very good side these days. They've been threatening to do that to a few teams, I think, in the last month or so. It's one of them that they're a team now that will punish a team when you don't turn up and you're not fully switched on, which we weren't.
I made that same comment. Obviously, they knocked 4 past Man United. They spanked Liverpool in the FA Cup. Al won't like to hear this, but I think it'll be an absolute travesty if Brighton don't get Europe this season, because in my eyes, they're the best team that's come to Molyneux this year. I know Man City spanked us, but at times when we got beat by Brighton at home this season, it felt like we were playing against 12 or 13 players.
Yeah.
We'll talk about your request a bit later on, Al. Obviously, Villa lost their first game for a while. The first away game under Emery for a while against Man United last Sunday. I watched the highlights about an hour and a half ago, and from the bits that I saw, you had quite a few chances, and definitely good half chances that on another day you could have won that game, never mind stole a point.
Yeah, man, I think still encouraging. We held them to 1-0, whereas like the sort of Steven Gerrard Villa would have probably just collapsed and lost by handful. But yeah, I think the squad's looking a little bit tired because we've had the same squad now for the last 2, 3, maybe 4 matches, and like the choice is sort of limited. So we're starting to look a little bit tired now. So that might sort of help you guys at the weekend. But still sort of ground out that result and held it to 1-0. So I'll take that.
Is there anything sort of basic you can put into words on how Unai Emery has improved you as a unit?
It's strange because in January, when it was transfer window, we seemed to sell a lot of players, didn't buy anybody. And I thought that was going to be a massive problem with depth of squad. But I think basically it's just that if he's given everybody a role now and everyone's clear on what they're doing, whereas before there's a lot of changing around of the squad. Obviously, we had Ings competing with Watkins, and I think there just seemed to be some confusion there in what he wanted and what they were expected to do. And now they all seem to know the jobs and they have a vision. So he's done something magical with them. I don't know what it is, but he's done it.
Apart from sort of the recent run that Ollie Watkins has had and turned into some sort of prime R9, what other players has he improved? I mean, Douglas Luiz seems to be a player that's improved since January.
Yeah, Dougie. Buendia has also sort of upped his game. He seems to sort of be hungry for it. The one that's really stood out from the beginning of the season for me is McGinn. When Gerrard took over, I thought he was going to be, the sort of shining star then really have a good season, but he just seemed to sort of plummet. Since Unai's come in, took over, he's looking leaner, he's looking more focused. At the beginning of the season, people used to just take the ball off him from behind every single time, and now he's looking sharper on the ball. He's got more desire, and obviously he's the captain again. So I don't know, the sort of old sort of atmosphere in the squad just seems to be just overhauled, really.
Looking at those Villa players on the right, Phil, who sort of concerns you the most? For me, it's Emery Buendia, but how about yourself?
I think you've got to be concerned about Watkins really in the run of form he's on. I think that Man U Villa game, I think he was on for a tap in on one of the chances, but he slipped in the 6-yard box, I think. He's just in the form of his career at the moment. Ramsey's a good player as well. You know, he makes those driving runs from midfield, and sort of he's one of those players that once he gets going, you know, he's quite hard to stop. Very good young player, but you know, it sounds the obvious one, but I'll go Watkins.
What about you, Danny?
Yeah, same Watkins. I think it was interesting listening to Al then about what Emery's done is define people's roles. If I think of our performance Saturday, sorry to mention it again, that's in the main problem. Players didn't know what the role was. But back to your question, yeah, Watkins, I think what Emery's done with him is he's kept him central. He's kept him around the box. I think I watched a few Villa games last season and beginning of this season. He was practically a winger, and that's not his game. For me, sometimes he still does need 2 or 3 chances before he gets one. But no offence, it's the same for us. That's why he's at Villa. That's why he's not at, you know, the upper echelons in terms of the big clubs. But I'm interested to see how we handle it, especially with the performances I saw. Do we drop deep and let him get in the box? Do we step up and they can drop balls behind to see how Sarr reacts to that? Because Watkins is fast as well. So I think it's going to be intriguing, and he's going to be the one I'm not looking forward to playing against at the minute.
I was on the Hulkcast last night previewing our game for them last night, and I was asked what were the sort of main flaws that Villa could exploit, and I pretty much said a high press and sort of putting Jose Sarr under pressure. The question that's been raised since Brighton, Phil, is maybe replacing Jose Sarr for Dan Bentley. Where do you stand on that?
I don't think it's got to that. You know, we've got good form at home. Really, the last 3 or 4. Sarr's made some big saves in those games. You know, especially against Palace, he made a couple of very, very good saves that kept Palace out there. As he said, he has throughout the season he's been inconsistent. I think it's just been highlighted a little bit more now. I think, but I don't think we're in territory of making a keeper swap just yet, really. Plus, it's going to be a big game. You know, the crowd's going to be up for it. You know, yes, Bentley's been playing in the Championship, but I think you want that experience there as well. So I wouldn't be making the change personally.
Where do you stand on that, Danny?
I 100% agree. I think it's a change potentially, and personally, I think we should do in the summer, not now, especially for a keeper that he's never made a Premier League appearance, has he? So not for me now. We're nearly safe. Just leave it as it is.
Obviously, he's got a lot of experience, Dan Bentley, but it's just for me, I don't think you can throw someone into a game where the atmosphere will be pretty high tempo on Saturday. Obviously, the team news that's come out from Julian Lopetegui's press conference today is that Nelson Semedo has been ruled sort of 50-50 after his knee injury away at Brighton, having to come off. Obviously, Dan Bentley is pushing to start, but whether Lopetegui makes that calls another story. He kept on making the point that Wolves are fighting to survive, and every point's important, as well as Villa being a good side and Ollie Watkins being a danger. I did word that intentionally, that I wanted to say that Ollie Watkins is a danger. You can take the context whichever you like, and he's called upon the Wolves fans to be there, not just in the good moments but the bad on Saturday, which is going to be key for us to get the 3 points, isn't it, Phil? Having the Molyneux crowd on side.
Yeah, definitely. You know, and these games, the crowd, do get up for it. You know, you always used to, you're always looking forward to them. The sort of local derbies, and it has in the main been Villa in the past sort of few years. So yeah, we should, but we've got as I said, we've got a good record at home. You know, we've got an actual decent record against Villa, probably since they've come up. So yeah, there shouldn't be any reason the crowd's not up for it.
We don't count behind closed doors because of the pandemic. Fixtures do. We also, like I said, the form is in Wolves' favour on Saturday. The Villa team news from Unai Emery's press conference was that he believes the next 2 games are massively important in Villa's quest for Europe. Matty Cash, Philippe Coutinho, Leon Bailey, and Kamara due late fitness test. And then the last comment there, which you can see, is that Unai Emery's thirsty for blood. Because I think he looks like Dracula, guys. So, Al, how confident are you actually going into this game on Saturday?
You know what? It's a tough one, isn't it? Because, like you say, our form against Wolves hasn't been brilliant, especially at the Molineux. Yeah, and I think after last weekend's result, the Wolves are definitely going to want to sort of rectify that at home against the Villa, aren't they? So I'm a little hesitant, especially with the squad sort of having the sort of lack of depth. You know, we haven't got like Bailey to bring on to add pace when, you know, someone's tired, or Kamara's been a rock as well. He's been great. He's really missed. So yeah, I think it's gonna be a tough one. I'm a bit nervous about it, really.
I like to hear it. I'll keep that. Obviously, I mentioned a moment ago that Philip Coutinho's got a late fitness test. How integral is he into Villa nowadays, or do you wish that Steven Gerrard had put his eggs in the Emi Buendia basket and not sort of spent half of his budget on Coutinho?
I think he's a good option to have to bring on to sort of maybe change things up a bit. But yeah, I mean, he had a great start at the Villa. But yeah, I don't know, the likes of Buendia, I don't know, the sort of work rate has just seemed like double. And for me, he seems the more aggressive, more hungry player, really. Whereas Coutinho, though he is a very skilled player, I think he just gets bullied off the ball a bit too easily. The tricks don't really mean a lot on the pitch, you know what I mean? But yeah, I like Buendia. I think he's a great player. Last match I went to, you know, you just see the passion in him, and like you could see he really wants to do well for the club. Him and Watkins were having a bit of a back and forth, but that's a good thing, you know. Both players are passionate, so it's good to see.
Yeah, it's going to be a big game on Saturday. Thanks to those who are tuning in at Wolves Fancast on our YouTube channel. Please press the subscribe button if you haven't already. Enjoying some of the comments so far. Obviously, Dean Marsden's come in saying Bentley comes in against Everton if we are mathematically safe for me. And Andrew Knight's come back with another comment. Sar's a little bit wank though, to be fair. So we'll see which sort of camp Julian Lopetegui sits in on Saturday come 2:00 when the lineups come out. Danny, it's going to come to you for a quick second. What sort of Wolves Villa fixtures over the years sort of stand out for you in regards to just either days out at Villa Park or wins or just bad days? What fixtures stand out for you?
That's the easiest question tonight, isn't it? It's got to be the 3-2 at Villa Park when we was 2-0 down. I'll be honest, I was literally 30 seconds away from leaving. We got one back, so you have to stay. By the time I'm in the third goal, that's what we live for, and that's why we go to games. We got back to Wolverhampton in the Oxford, and there were a bunch of lads that were absolutely gutted. They'd missed a lot. So that one, I remember going there in the 90s for a League Cup game. It was in the Villa end with my mum and dad. So were a lot of other Wolves fans. And that was, especially imagine the mid-90s, that was quite interesting outside the ground after. As you've already alluded to.
Down when flipping that ginger Tommy Johnson broke my 8-year-old heart that night. I remember us going to the quarter-final of the Coca-Cola Cup. We'd beat Coventry City like 3-0 or 3-1 or maybe 2-1. 2-1 at Molly Mark. Venus scored an absolute cracker of a free kick that night. I wish I had that video of me on BBC Match of the Day when that third goal went in last season, because like you said, like moments like that is what you go to football for. It was an out of body experience for me at the time, because like you said, going into the 80th minute, Villa fans were literally giving it the biggest chest in the history of chests. You know, just giving it large, you know, 2-0 on your big day out and all that malarkey. So to get that third goal in injury time was, like I said, out of body experience. What games stand out for you, Al?
The one that really stands out for me was at Molineux.
Thanks for coming tonight, Al. Go on, carry on.
The one that really stands out was at the Molineux, and it was a 4-0, and it was Angel, Hitzelberg, and Melberg. That for me, because obviously I've got loads of mates that are Wolves fans, and being in the stand and seeing a few of them coming up to the the bottom of the stand and sort of giving us some hand gestures and stuff like that. And then there's like sort of corporate boxes right behind us, and we're getting it from behind as well. And the atmosphere and just sort of running away with it like that. We don't see it a lot now. Obviously, it just seems a lot tighter these days in the last few years. But that for me was one of the best. Just jumping in the taxi, like you say, coming out the ground and sort of running for a taxi, and then on the way back to sort of Gornal. Yeah, it's just heaven.
What about you, Phil?
Probably one that stands out recently is it was the 2-0 in the Championship. It was a 5:30 kickoff, I think, if I remember correctly. Atmosphere was great. Obviously we've been in the pubs early, and it was one of the first games I'd seen that season with Nuno in charge, and like watching it because it was second half goals, Jota, Bonatini. Watching it, I was like, wow, there's actually something going on here. But it was a really, really good atmosphere, and as I say, it was a game we sort of like dominated really. But I think it's probably more because it was a 5:30 kickoff, really, and that you get that extra couple of hours in the pub and stuff like that. The atmosphere is always better. It just adds to it, and we played them off the park. So I'd go with that one.
Yeah, you can't beat Molineux under the lights. I'm sure Al probably says the same about Villa Park. Touching on that 2-0, Phil, and something that Al mentioned, because that 4-0, Villa was sort of probably going for, maybe, was they in Europe back then, Al? Or they're definitely like pushing, were they, under Martin O'Neill?
Pushing for it, yeah.
So that 2-0 at Molineux was the first time where I felt Wolves were sort of head and shoulders, ability-wise, better than Villa that night. The way Wolves dominated that game that night was ridiculous at times, and obviously the Olayin passing towards the end of that game was really a nice sight to see. It's that part of the show which I don't like doing, but I always mention I don't like doing, but I have to do it anyway. It's score prediction time, and as you're our guest, Al, what's your score prediction for the Saturday 3 p.m. between Wolves and Villa?
I'm going to go 2-1 to Villa.
It would be your first goal scorer if you're going to put a scorecast together.
Oh man, I'd say Watkins for Villa, and then Wolves bring it back, and then say, let's go Watkins again, man. Let's just do Watkins.
Ollie Watkins double. What about you, Danny? This is your first episode on the Wolves Fancast tonight, and I hate doing score predictions because it can literally ruin your weekend. It can make you look like an absolute Mystic Meg or make you look like an absolute Smeg. What is your score prediction for Saturday?
Well, I was going to say I fancy a 1-1, but now Al's gone all in. We'll go 1-0. Neves, clumsy Mings giving us a penalty.
Yeah, that's definitely a chance.
Andrew Knight in the comments section has also mentioned if Daniel Podence doesn't start on Saturday, we'll be lucky to get a 0-0 draw, and he's predicted, sadly, 2-0 to Aston Villa. What is your score prediction, Phil?
I mean, I was going to mirror Danny, to be honest. I think for one of the first times in a while, Villa are going to come here clear favourites, I think. We can't argue that they're probably, they're on the better form, the better team last few months. But as I said, I think our home form, I think it could push us, but I see it only nicking it. So 1-0, I think would be the scoreline for me. It's just, I can't see us dominating for a 2-0. It's one of them that if Villa score first, it's going to be difficult for us. We've found it difficult all season. I'd go with Danny again, 1-0. 1-0 the Wolves.
It is horrible to say, isn't it, that if Villa do get the first goal on Saturday, Danny, that it's so difficult being a Wolves fan watching this football in the last sort of, coming up to sort of 2 years now. We scored 38 league goals last season. We're on 29 this season. Erling Haaland 6 goals in front of us. It's ridiculous, isn't it? What's your sort of main strategy for where we need to overhaul in the summer?
Yeah, I think we've got to get a to jail free card in January. To be honest, I think we've got to give credit to the manager for turning us around because we were gone, but he's been helped with that window. But we'd seen that as fans; it was coming. We were we were slipping, the standards were slipping, and the windows, on paper, we were spending money, but it was incorrectly. We need a new striker, whether I think we've been linked again today with the lad from Coventry, Gyökeres, is it? We need a goal scorer. We need to clear out of some of these wide attacking players, because we seem to have a bit of a fetish for defensive midfielders and wide attacking players. Funny that someone's commented about Pedence, he'd be one I'd get rid of. Just more direct people, more presence. We can't get away again next season with not having a player who can't hit double figures, even 10, 11 goals. It's not good.
I think not having two players who are hitting sort of double figures is really poor for a club that are as established as Wolves now. Where do you see us needing to improve in the summer, Phil?
I think everyone, centre forward has got to be the main target. You've got to think.
Stop you there, Phil, for a second. I keep hearing that Wolves need to get a centre forward, but you look at sort of Diego Costa, Raul Jimenez before and after the injury, Fabio Silva for the short period where he was leading the line. These aren't strikers that have been missing sitter after sitter every game. Where's the creativity coming from in this team?
Yeah, well, I think if you have a good striker, they turn the bad balls into good crosses, don't they? And I think Raul certainly was very good at that. A lot of people talk about our fullbacks that they don't have many assists, and if you don't have anyone in the box, they're not going to get any assists, are they? And I think you have a good striker, they sniff out the goals, they turn some of the bad crosses into good, and that's where I think you've got to think that we have Fabio back from loan. Probably we've got Sasa to come back. You think Cunha, he's not an out-and-out goal scorer, is he really? You think he's probably best in the 10 slot or playing with at least a target man. I agree. A wide player, whether it's we need to clear out or what, a wide player that actually scores, because, you buy all these players, but if they're not actually creating anything, which they aren't, and they're not scoring, are they just fit in a system? What are they actually doing? So, I mean, could Neto be that person? I don't know. He's had a bad run of injuries, but you'd have thought we all probably thought he'd have kicked on by now. Turned into that player we thought he was going to be. And then, I don't know. I think we could probably do with it's one of the fullbacks, isn't it? It probably another right back, I reckon. I don't think Smado's got any competition. Will he still be here? I don't know. But I think we need some competition at right back, really. Left back, Lopetegui needs to decide who he wants at left back, and then we see where we are then. But I think we're concentrating on the offensive, really. I think we've got solid enough centre backs. Will we go for a goalkeeper? Don't know. But you can't replace everyone, can you? There's not an unlimited money pot, as we found out. So we've got to target the right people, and and you've got to think we're going to sell some people. But yeah, you don't know how much we're going to recoup. Neves is probably the biggest sellable asset. Like that's a given. But there's not going to be many others that are going to fetch large sums in the market, I don't think.
Do you know that meme where the man's lying next to his wife and he's probably thinking about other women? What I'm thinking about is how many players we're going to get rid of this summer and actually going to need to bring in. Because like you said, I think if Lopetegui wants to play the football that he wants to play, Jose Sá will be out the door this summer. And you look at sort of the majority of our matchday squad in recent weeks, it's probably easier to do a list of players that you think definitely will be here than not, because like some of them aren't really justifying their place in the squad, are they? So
yeah, I think it's a question
to have, isn't it?
Yeah, if you asked every Wolves fan, I think centre forward's going to be the stock answer. After that, I think you could get a whole variety, and it would probably change week to week. Sort of that's sort of where we are with this squad. I think it's just a bit of a mishmash sort of thing. We've got some very good players, don't get me wrong, but it is a bit. We probably do need a little bit of a clear out, I think.
Right, let's end the show with the quick quiz segment that I always do, which is our sudden death squads. I'm not sure if you're aware of how we play this, Alan, Danny. But basically, I pick a fixture between which will be Wolves and Villa this weekend from previous years gone by. You have to name a player that started in the game. If he was a sub and came on, you have to go again. And this week's fixture is the 2-2 draw at Villa Park from March 2010. So, as you're the new guest this week, Danny, I'm going to come to you first and ask you to name a player that played in the 2-2 draw between Villa and Wolves at Villa Park on March 2010.
Oh, Matt Jarvis.
Matt Jarvis. Was he in the starting lineup that day? He was. He was substituted. Right. Phil, you next.
Dave Edwards.
Unfortunately, Phil, you fell at the first hurdle. You're out of this week's sudden death squads. Al, I'm going to come to you. 2010, Villa at home, 2-2. Who played in that game?
Brad Friedel.
The American goalkeeper started for Villa that day. It's back to you, Danny.
2010. Ebanks Blake.
Al, if you get this player right, you've won this week's sudden death because Sylvain Ebanks Blake did not feature in that game. Danny, he was on the bench and did not come on.
Okay. I'm going to say not so young, Ashley Young.
I'm hoping this is not setting the precedent for this weekend. Alex Arm has won this week's sudden death squad. Quick look on the screen now, guys. You can see the teams from that day. Obviously, Brad Friedel in goal for Wolves. Marcus Hanneman was in goal for Wolves that day. Kevin Doyle, you could have had Danny. Ronald Zubar, captain Carl Emery. For Villa, John Carew scored 2 that day. Emil Heskey. Phil players could have went for, obviously, like Kevin Foley, Jody Craddock. Some big players that played that day. Obviously, George Elikobi came on for Wolves. Michael Mancienne, a really wishy-washy player during that time at Wolves. Alex Arm is this week's winner of Sudden Death Squads. Alex, tell the viewers where they can find you. Obviously, I mentioned earlier on the show, like musician, playing the Rainbow on Birmingham on Sunday.
That's right, yeah. So if you want to find out any more about our music, just go to alexohm.com and then you'll find all our links to different socials and things there. We've got the Rainbow on Sunday in Digbeth. And then, hopefully got like loads more shows coming up through the year. So it'd be great to see people down there.
Any upcoming music, Al?
We've just been in the studio recording in Wolves, just down the road from the Molyneux at the New Hampton Arts Centre, RML Studios. So hopefully we'll get that out later in the year. And I'll keep you posted with that.
Obviously, me and Al go back quite a few years from the Light Bar on a Friday days, the occasional Blast Off back bar. If you aren't aware, Al was also in a fantastic band, The Lines, back in the day, which obviously had some amazing times following Al and the band around the country. I never made the Amsterdam gig, which was a big blow following the guys. Just before we... From that. Ian Brown still talks about it, I'm sure. As you know, recently, Wolves Fancast, we broke the 2,000 subscribers mark on YouTube. So, please press the like button before you go. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Ending the show tonight before I say goodbye from all of us. Al has got his most recent single was Joy, which we're going to play it with the show today. As he's mentioned, they're playing the Rainbow on Birmingham. There's still tickets that you can buy on the day. Bye from me, Danny, Phil, and Al. Hopefully, 3 points for Wolves on Saturday. We'll be back on Sunday for a match review episode, which hopefully, if we do win, Al, you're welcome back on. If we don't win, we'll hopefully see you next season. Here's Alex Ryan with his single, Joy. Good night.
Cheers, guys.
Have a great bank holiday weekend. And God save the King, Steve Bull.